start with Ralph. Do you want to we're starting with you full screen, and I'm gonna add myself.
Do I look good enough next to you?
No one's as good looking as me, Ralph, but you look fine. What are you talking about? It's not TikTok.
So you're saying Ralph is not looking good enough for TikTok?
um, TikTok does seem to be a beauty. I'm not an expert on TikTok.
Anybody has a TikTok account here in this round?
No. Too old.
Fun?
I'm too old.
Yeah. What should I say? Even my kids, they
on an
don't have
event,
them.
I was asked to take a photo of some other participants at the event, and my colleague came up to me. It's like, "You're taking photos like a boomer. Give me your phone." And then she took over and she took like Instagram compatible photos that I could never have taken in the same way. So now I'm officially boomer generation. Oh.
So I'm not going to do that much in terms of interesting. Thing is, actually, I'm going to greet the audience. Welcome everybody who's joining us now. We're starting in 60 seconds. And we're just letting people come in. And that recording you heard, by the way, is just a Zoom recording. And we've got a now, is DiGA worth it for health tech startups? And I'm going to tell you something personal, and you could agree or disagree. This is what I've heard. I think when that very first speaker I had on a webinar, when DiGA was first announced, he says, "This is it. This is the breakthrough. This is going to make it's the golden opportunity for health tech startups in Europe, Jose." And then a year later, he said to me, "Jose, the dream has turned into a nightmare. And it's so difficult now. And I'm so disappointed." I mean, that he didn't explain why, but I think it comes to the question here: is DiGA worth it? And I'm introducing our first speaker, Ralf-Gordon Jahns from R2G Connect. And Ralph was one of actually the first speakers I've had in a webinar way back 2020. Oh no, it wasn't one of my, back in 2024. You gave
I think
great.
you had many before, right?
Yeah, it feels like a long time ago. And it was you were in my first 10 webinars. You were in the first 10. And I'm wondering and you've done a lot of work with bringing health tech startups together in a forum where they could pool resources and opportunities. Very, very knowledgeable about, and this might sound Canadian, where the puck is going in the industry. And I wonder if you could set the stage. Why are we doing this event? Why is this topic important right now? Why are we talking about this? And is it worth it? Is DiGA worth it?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the invite, Jose. Yes, you're right. The discussion around DiGA over the last few years that had seen a lot of changes. So the initial hype, that's the new channel for digital health therapeutic solutions, targeting directly 72 million insurers. people in public health insurance in Germany. That was also seen as a blueprint for all the other countries, and they all came to Germany. They wanted to learn how we did it. That was really super innovative, and everybody was excited about it. Well, most people were excited about it, yeah. And then, as it is with normal innovation, yeah, then the first DiGAs were launched. They saw that, oh, it's not that easy to gain so many prescriptions over a year or even a month. And so there was a bit of a disillusion. But we always thought that it's all about having the right expectation. DiGA is still a super channel for certain applications. And if you compare that with other options DTX solutions have currently in Europe, then DiGA is still a valid option. And let me share some of the findings or the slides which we prepared in order to set the scene for our discussion. So the main topic is really, is it worth thinking about DiGA and even launching a DiGA app today? And let me share my screen.
We see it.
Okay, just a second, let me full screen. Okay, so is it really worth it? Is it worth the investment? And that there is an interest, that's for sure. Everybody talks about DiGA over the last years, and what we mapped here is basically the interest funnel for DiGA applications. So there are hundreds of companies that required at the B farm finding out more whether they want to launch, whether they should launch a DiGA app or not. Then we had 246 applications, thereof 74 have been accepted. Currently, there are 58. So there is an interest in DiGA application. Not all come through. That's obviously the fact. There are, medical reasons for not being accepted. There might be internal business case reasons for not following with the application through the end, and so on and so forth. But there is an interest in the DiGA channel. And over the last years, it grew to I would say, to a significant market in the DTX world. In 25, yeah, that's from a DiGA report, the market grew to 171 million, increased by more than 60% year on year. So it became a significant market. But where is the revenue going to? So there are only a few companies that make substantial revenue. There are different reasons for this, but you can see that here in the chart, which is also coming from a DiGA report. So the big errors, yeah, they symbol also the companies that made a substantial amount of revenues. So we all know about Oviva Direct. They joined, I think, 2 years ago, and then they have been able to generate 67 million only last year with prescription. And then we have Vivera, it's an MSK app, 8.5 million. Calmeda, Tinnitus, and Hello Better it's a mental health solution. We tried to find out what does it take, what is needed in order to have a successful DiGA app, and we put down here some key assumptions, which I want to share with you. So basically, our thinking is about, if you're thinking of launching a DiGA, what should be your goal? We think you should become one of those tiers, either the top 10 tier or the middle 10 tier, and not fall into the low tier and have only little market share over the next 5 years. So your ambition should be really to belong to one of the upper 2 tiers. And we also listed here the key assumptions and the pricing options. But what does it mean in terms of prescriptions and activated prescriptions over time? So if you belong to the top 10 tier, like Oviva Direct, then you would aim at having more than 2,000 activated prescriptions per month in 27. So 2,000 plus activated prescription per month. And the assumption is that the market grows as it used to grow over the last few years, and then those companies will make around 24,000 activations per month. If you belong to one of those other tiers, then you activate significant less prescriptions over the months, but still significant amount. And you can think, okay, what is actually needed in order to have a successful DiGA investment? The revenue follows accordingly. You see a significant increase in the top tier revenues, and then a smaller increase in the middle tier and low tier. That translates into your business case, assuming a 30 million investment over 5 years, including the development investment. And what it means that if you belong to a top 10 tier DTX solution listed in DiGA, then it's all fine. If you belong to a mid-tier company, then it will turn out well for you, or positive for you. If you belong to a low tier, then it will be difficult. There are also aspects there to consider how to make that investment worse for you. So we saw a lot of platform initiatives where the investment can be reduced to have one platform and publish multiple DiGA apps. But with that, I leave it to the experts to discuss what it takes to have a successful DiGA investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. And I'm going to bring on our next speaker. We're going to bring Ralph back. And Raquel, I'm going to
Hi.
join you on the screen here so you don't feel. And I'm wondering, so we've had the basic introduction. Now each speaker is going to go into be a bit more specific. And so we're going to narrow focus. What advice do you have for people? By the way, Raquel, CoLAB TRIALS. I'm wondering if you could introduce yourself quite quickly before we get into your advice to the startups. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure. Thank you also for the invitation. So I work as a cooperation and funding manager at CoLAB TRIALS based in Portugal, and we help innovators and startups during their development phase of the products by providing regulatory science and also helping on designing preclinical and innovative clinical studies. So here I'll be providing this regulatory perspective. As
go ahead.
First, if I can start jumping into this topic. So I think that what is most important from the regulatory perspective is to give a context. So the digital health falls within the medical device area. And there was a big shift in how the healthcare is being provided. So we are moving from a point of care that was previously at the hospitals and at the labs to be at the patient side. And we see that the decisions are not only on the doctor anymore, they are collaborative decisions with the patient and taking into account all these data that can be generated with the digital health. So these changes, it is a big change to the healthcare context. And of course, it comes with adaptations that need to be made. Now, regarding the regulatory aspects and perspectives, as you were saying before, of course, DiGA came with a lot of promise, but then startups were facing difficulties regarding still the complexity. So it came with mechanisms to accelerate, but indeed, this is still a complex environment. And that's because we have to take into account multiple regulations, multiple standards and ISOs, and that, as well as guidance that helps you apply the regulations. So you have guidelines from the WHO, you have different organizations such as the Regulatory Framework for Medical Devices and the International Medical Device Regulation Forum. So all of them have provided guidelines in all the different aspects related to softwares as a medical device, which is one of the types within the medical devices, which most of the case is the case of the digital health technologies. So what is important is that startups clearly define what is their intended use. So in case they do have a medical purpose, then they actually need to go through this more complex path. Although there is mechanisms to make it, let's say, easier to navigate all this regulatory landscape in order to certify and go to market. And in what comes to regulations, of course, startups need to develop their regulatory strategy, taking into account different regulations. I would like to stress the importance of some of them, of course, the medical device regulation, but also in the context of all these data that can be generated, there are other important regulations, such as the European Health Data Space, the Data Governance Act and the EU Data Act, which are very important because these would be a great deal of innovation for startups, because they would have the access to lots of public health data sets that they could use, for instance, to develop AI algorithms, and in this way they would innovate their products. So this is a very positive for startups, and of course cross-border health data sharing will be and it is possible in the European data space. Of course, we have to take into account all the data protection issues with the GDPR, and those of course come with some requirements to ensure the security and anonymization or pseudonymization of the data. And it's also important, of course, to take into account the cybersecurity of the digital health solutions. And in case they have AI, of course, they have to comply with the AI Act to ensure that the product is trustworthy, is transparent, and there is accountability and human oversight. And there is one regulation, which is the Health Technology Assessment Regulation, that although it would be very important for digital health technology, there is a gap in this regulation regarding digital health technologies. So we actually need improved frameworks, and there is actually a EU project which is called EDITA, and they are focused actually on this gap. So what we are missing is a common framework where you can actually navigate all these different regulations in order to develop, test, and certify your device, making sure you are complying with whatever regulations you need to comply. In addition to these, you have to show your clinical evidence, the economical aspects of your technology as well. And from the clinical standpoint, there is a lot of tests that startups can do, starting from initial gathering of information, for instance, through surveys or interviews, where they get initial feedback on how to develop their product, towards usability testing with end users, and then, of course, retrospective and prospective studies that can be used to develop and test the technology. So it is important to have solid clinical evidence and also economic evidence that will support the certification and the reimbursement of the digital health technologies. So in this, now going back to the DiGA, DiGA, when it was published or announced, it came into practice in 2019. Of course, there was a big hype, and it was actually a great advance to distinguish the digital health solutions with proven clinical benefits for the patients from all the other wellness apps. And this became the new approach to market access, ensuring reliability and the safe use. And this was actually the most progressive framework at the time. And of course, now we have several countries in the EU that have similar frameworks. But this was a very important push to bring digital health innovations closer to market. And there was also a very good mechanism that was the fast track pathway, in which if the digital solution was a lower risk device, then it would have a fast track pathway. So of course they still need to show safety, the functionality, quality, and so on. But it could go through a faster step of evaluation, and very important is that by going through this process, they would be the digital technology would be able to be reimbursed in all the different health insurers across Germany. So that's very important to have access to the full potential in the country. And of course, we still have barriers. That's why that big hype then it came with a bit of frustration, because there is lots of barriers from different points of view, from having still low digital maturity and digital literacy among users, and including patients and healthcare professionals, towards lack of interoperability and infrastructure, and also German and EU political agenda to make new plans and strategies for the widespread use of these digital technologies. But as the drivers, we have the openness to innovation, availability of funds. For instance, we had previously the Recovery and Resilience Plan, also private investments. We have the European Health Data Space, which will be providing that access to data. So there's barriers, but there's also lots of drivers coming into place. And there's mechanisms as well that drive this progress. That would be, for instance, regulatory sandboxes, the data lakes, test beds, and innovation hubs that can potentiate also the digital technologies to go to market. And if I could leave some recommendations, I would say to use all these mechanisms that I just mentioned, the regulatory sandboxes, data lakes, and so on, and to have a push on the creation of a EU digital health working group that would encompass multiple stakeholders, from startups to the regulators and so on, and the patients as well, and the healthcare professionals. So to encompass all the ecosystem, to actually generate a common framework in the EU, because it will be more interesting for startups if we have not German, but a EU common framework to have a bigger market, where we could set the scene to promote these digital health solutions, that we would encompass all these different regulations. We would provide support with an advice mechanism that would support startups through their path, identify the best practices to actually be able to implement this new European framework to help the digital health technologies to move to the market and to be reimbursed in all the different EU countries.
Thank you, Raquel. Are you okay to stay for a bit? I'm going to bring on the other speakers.
Yes.
Thank you. That was so educational. And let's see if I can find him. Where is he? And Evghenii. Hello.
Hello.
And it's obvious actually I used to live in Valencia, but we haven't actually met. Although I met you on the train, on a Zoom
Yeah.
call at a train, just as I was pulling into Valencia. And
Yeah, it turns out to be that Spain is small.
and I think so we've gone over the why, we've gone over a little bit about the how, and Evgenii's going to talk to us about quality. And that's am I reducing you to a single word? Is that too reductionist?
It's fine because, like, in the end of the day, the quality is essential for any regulatory framework and all the regulatory paths that is represented by DiGA and not only. So I'm going to start with a short introduction. First of all, thank you for invitation. Happy to talk.
Oh, you're welcome.
Happy to talk here. I'm leading a product in a company called Virtual Nomad. We're based in the US, and in Europe we are represented in Poland, although I'm physically in Spain. We are an ISO 13485 certified software development, that is a company that is specializing in healthcare. And as like to start today's part of my speech, I'd like to say to Raquel that you already have the first member of that working group. If you ever consider like creating it in series, like,
Let's start.
Yeah, let's start it. I think that is important, and mainly because although today's session is dedicated to DiGA, I'd like to say that for any medical startup, DiGA is only like certifying within DiGA is only a part of their journey to the market, because out of all the steps you need to implement and to get done right and correct in order to get to the customers, getting certified in DiGA is like only a small portion. Although it's, yeah, it has like its own bureaucracy, it has its own processes, but submitting, the fact that you're submitting to DiGA means that you have obtained European certification already, that you have collected the medical evidence already, that you have developed the you cannot just start, okay, I'm going to create a medical software and go, I'm going to submit the next day to DiGA. That's not going to happen. So that's on one hand. On the other hand, again, as Raquel mentioned, there are some other countries that start offering similar programs. They are in their initial stage or not that centralized as DiGA is, but still, I believe that within years, we're going to see this tendency widening, and probably, who knows, one day we're going to have a Europe-wide, like EU-wide program that is going to either consume DiGA or replace DiGA, or like the individual programs in the other countries. So with that said, I think that, and if we're speaking about the advices to the startups, so with that said, I think it's essential to concentrate on the steps that are crucial to the success of passing such bureaucracy and regulatory steps as DiGA now offers. Because imagine you can think of DiGA as a channel that lets you, instead of negotiating with the individual insurance company or individual clinic or individual therapists, you can negotiate once, like with the state, and then have your software delivered and reimbursed by all the patients. And this is a little bit idealistic, because you still would have to talk to the therapist. You still would have to talk to individual hospitals, even after getting on board with DiGA. So basically, the important thing is to concentrate on the quality and on the value that is developed by the software. The amount of the job that has to be done prior to submitting to DiGA, again, and I would second Raquel's word about the privacy regulations, because although we know that the patient population that is being that can reimburse the software might not only reside in, I mean, they would reside in Germany, but basically they might be the nationals of any other EU country. So kind of the peculiarities of privacy data is a crucial thing. Then in terms of the software development itself and the traceability and the and explaining the quality system to the other regulators, such as complying to MDR to get the CE certification, or passing through the data privacy agencies, is essential. And it's also essential from the very beginning of the process, where you start developing the actual software. And I'm talking about the software because we are mostly specializing in the software as a medical device, not just like physical devices. And also, I think it's important to notice that the higher risk is implied by the intended use of the software, the more rigorous will be the requirements to the quality of the documentation, to the quality of the traceability of the software functions, and like the platform, that medical device that you are about to bring to the market. And to make it happen as smooth as it can, it's important to start first building the quality system around your software development process and whatever product you're trying to deliver, and then building on that, because our experience says that no product has been developed without, like in a single shot, without being changed. And it's important to have that evidence, collected from the very first time, and then basically being able to manage those changes in a more smooth manner. And that's what we see that is important when talking and working with our customers. I think this is more or less it that I wanted to share today. Any questions? Happy to follow up on them.
Thank you. I've got questions for you, but I'm going to save them for later. Do you mind if I bring you back on in about 20, 30 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to.
And Benjamin. Some of you may
Hey,
have
Jose.
noticed. How you
Good to see
doing?
you.
Good to see
Good.
you.
How are you?
Yeah, very good. And I think it was like I think I was melting when I met you last week.
Well, same here now.
And temperature dropped 10 degrees Celsius the next day. Can you believe that? But whatever. And we were actually, I posted a clip of Benjamin on Friday. And we went on a tangent. We were talking about elders care. Now, I want you to talk about pitfalls and the benefit of and this was the theme last week when I was talking to people about this, is you need to partner with people, or there's a benefit to partnering with people. And there's lots to be little surprises. I wonder if you could speak to that. What are the advantages in partnering, and what are the common what does it unlock for people?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, last week when we spoke, you asked me what would be my kind of first advice to a startup that wants to get going in the DiGA space. And after having thought about it for a few moments, I think the key advice that I would share is that you should try and get expert information, expert advice and knowledge in as early as possible. When we started to work in our app agency on the first DiGA product, that was like back in 2020, we were on the road toward building a medical device. We were on the road of having everything built such that it fit with the vision for the therapy concept, for the quality of the resulting application, as well as for the then known requirements with regards to DiGA development and DiGA fast track. But as you know, as development progressed, you played kind of catch up with the requirements advancing during those initial years of DiGA. So nowadays, while there's still change, they're somewhat stable. Also, an ecosystem has developed around DiGA systems, and there are a lot of different requirements that are being placed on DiGAs as software products that you wouldn't typically think of out of the box. And if you bring in a partner early who has gone through this process, who has been able to build a DiGA, who has had the DiGA listed in the directory and has had to go through building for reimbursement, building for Gesundheits-ID, building for data export and electronic patient file, building for BSI IT security compatibility, they have seen what's going to be an application that's compliant with the regulatory requirements. And they will have seen what initial work they have performed to build a regular application has been unnecessary maybe, and could have been avoided as both time spent as well as budget spent compared to if you had brought in someone right from the start. The most important of those being like the BSI IT security requirements, I would say, because if you know how you'll be building compliant applications right from the start, you could build these in right from the start. You don't need to first build something and then see what gaps you have to BSI compliance and then fix those gaps. This kind of plays together also with the ways in which you approach like logins and registrations and working with Gesundheits-ID, because BSI requirements are quite strict. So you can avoid some of the implementations that you would normally have performed. Go with like an out-of-the-box solution or vendor that provides a standardized approach that is pre-qualified and pre-compliant, so that you spare yourself the headache of first having to build like a regular login system, then have it ripped out and replaced later on, for example. So all of that are kind of reasons why I think you should bring in a partner right from the start, because they can help you avoid the pitfalls and help you avoid the detours. They can help you interpret what BSI actually considers to be a compliant implementation with regards to the requirements that they are posting. So yeah, that kind of in a nutshell would be what I would share with people, whether that's us, whether that's BAYOOMED, whether that's anybody else who's been specializing in providing services in this DiGA space. They will know where there are product solutions out there that you don't have to build yourself, or where there are maybe open source solutions that you can bring into your product, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel all over again. If you went to Gematik and you were looking at the specs for Gesundheits-ID or for electronic patient file, and if you are thinking that you are going to be building that integration yourself, think again. You should go with an out-of-the-box product solution for that, even if you intend to build a platform eventually, because initially it doesn't provide much value to invest into these directions, but rather go with something that you can license, go with a product that exists, bring it in, skip those parts, get to revenues first, and then once you build your second or third DiGA and you get to platform, then maybe you want to consider replacing those kind of brought-in solutions by something that you hand build. But yeah, those maybe as a quick overview of what I would consider like super important advice that startups should look at. You're mute.
Take myself off mute. I didn't actually start speaking, so I took myself off mute. Benjamin, thank you so much for that. Do you mind if I bring you back in about 10 minutes?
Not at all. Yeah, looking forward to that.
And Miriam, let's see, are you here? And yeah.
Hi. Yeah.
Add spotlight. Sorry about that link.
No, that's all good. All good. I'm here. I made it.
You know what? It seems like, Miriam, and that whenever we talk about health technology and innovation, marketing always comes last. And should marketing always be the last thing we think about?
No, I mean, I'm not a marketing expert, right? But I've been in this area of digital health medical software for 17 years now. 17 years, it's quite a long time. And we started with our first DiGA 2020, also as Benjamin said. And I guess the challenges over the years, they changed. When we started, there was a big, as we heard from Raquel as well, like the regulatory burden. Everyone was like, oh yeah, MDR, and this is brand kind of new. And I mean, we had this discussion also, I mean, long in the last year, class 2A and class 1, but everyone was also very insecure about the BfArM, like the guidance document for DiGA. But over the years, I saw this shifting, because we saw more and more DiGAs evolving and actually tackle the regulatory stuff, and also what I think is very important, the evidence stuff. And I'm not talking about the clinical evidence. Those is quite easy if you are a class 1, class 2A device, but really like the positive care effect studies. We saw a lot of DiGA fail because of not achieving the results. And we also saw that BfArM is really putting high expectations on the trial. Currently, the trials are set up like you have a drug, right? I heard already that some of the DiGA provider manufacturers, they had to provide like a placebo app, just like you have in a drug trial. So you have participants using the actual DiGA, and then you have participants using the placebo DiGA. So I think from the regulatory part, we tackled that. And as Benjamin said, there are a lot of providers and consultants out there that can support you with that have been there, that have done the work already. And then you can decide what do you want to outsource, what you do yourself, and just get some consultants in. So this is, I guess that's not rocket science. It's not easy, but it's feasible. The evidence part, like the positive care effect part, is more tricky. And you should start with this really early on, because how you set up your DiGA has an effect of your endpoints you want to prove in your clinical trial or your evidence study. And if you get this wrong in the beginning, your positive care effect study will fail. So this is something where I always recommend to have a close look for every startup, really get someone on board that can support with the product setup, and also having in mind, okay, this will be our primary endpoint in the end, and that can also support with the BfArM discussions about this. And now to bridging back how Ralf started, I guess what all the startups, I mean, I get a lot of requests, even recently again. There's, I guess, a new hype in the startup scene for DiGA again. And you have to really do your homework and calculate your business case. Like, what will be my prescription numbers? What will be the amount of money I get for my prescription? And not everyone is going to be Oviva. I mean, we have to be really, really true about this. And I really like the numbers Ralf shared. You really, really have to do your homework also on the marketing and sales side. And this is how so many startups totally forget about, because they usually come from the tech side. They have a great technical solution. And then they think we just need the regulatory stuff done and then we're good to go. But they totally forget about the evidence, and they totally forget about the sales channel. I'm not a salesperson. I don't do consulting in this, but you have to really focus on this from early on and see, what's my strategy? Do I want to collaborate with pharma? Do I want to set up my own sales force? How will this look like? Do I have like right contacts to get right into the HCPs? Or do I do like a mixed model, or have like an external sales team? There's so different opportunities, but you really have to like have your strategy right away, because you need this strategy. And this is the first question I ask all the startup is, how is about funding? Like, how is your financial status? And most of them are saying, oh yeah, we're looking for investors. And if you want to look for investors, of course, you need to have a strategy, how you want to develop your product, but how you want to bring it on the market, and how much revenue you will have in, I don't know, 3 years. So this is what I always try to bring to the startups. And why we see in the numbers that DiGA might be worth the investment. I'm always encourage the startups to look also for other reimbursement opportunities, also like as a second or third plan. I know contracting with German health insurances is not as easy as well, and also the get patients to pay out of pocket is not very famous in Germany, especially, and also in entire Europe, because I mean we already paid for our health insurances. Why should we pay for an extra app again? So, but still, there might be other opportunities, other countries to scale in. There are pathways in the US and so on. So also really think of the entire picture, and don't think about sales about like at the end. Yeah, it should be your second thought already when in development. This is what I'm always telling them.
What should be their first thought? The endpoint?
The product. The product idea, the market fit. Because if you have a product that cannot show evidence, or this is just not a fit for the market, you can have a very good sales team, but they probably won't sell it.
You know what I took away from what you just said, and I'm going to sound like a cheesy marketing person, but there was a moment in 1996 when consumer tech changed, and Steve Jobs. I'm not one of these Steve Jobs worshipers, but Steve Jobs was on a stage, and he was speaking to a group of Apple engineers, and they were angry with, some of them were very angry with him because they'd built something and he wasn't selling it. I think it was, I can't even remember what it was called now. And but basically what Steve Jobs says is, no, we start with the marketing strategy, and then from there we develop the product. Whereas what he took over in 1996, Basically, what was happening is, this is what we built. Now you go sell it. He goes, it can't work like that. It has to be the other way around. And of course, I'm in marketing, so I always talk about marketing. But but you know what? Also, you talked about endpoints, and that warmed my heart because we do something similar in marketing. Always start with where do you want? Start from the end and work your way back to the beginning as to why you're doing it. Is there anything else you wanted to comment on? But before bringing everyone on screen on what the
I
previous
mean,
speakers have
I
said.
was, I guess, Raquel and Evgeny brought up the, European approach of a digital, like a reimbursable digital solution or like framework. And I doubt this will happen, to be honest, to be the party pooper here. Because our healthcare systems are national organized, and even if you bring a medical device, like a standard medical device on the market, you have to negotiate with all the different countries and stakeholders there. So I know there's a big wish for it, and I mean we have a European regulation, but I doubt that there will be a European reimbursement system or even a common acceptance of regulation. So what you need to provide to be reimbursed in a specific country. I know hopes are high, but I doubt this will happen because our healthcare systems are nationally organized and not European.
It's okay. Every webinar needs a party pooper.
Sorry.
And I'm bringing everybody. And oh, Benjamin, you're next. Speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because yeah, it sounds like a really, really big project, right? To bring kind of reimbursement like standardized across Europe. But maybe they could at least try and standardize on what can be accepted as like clinical evidence study across Europe. That would be already quite helpful, right? Because on the technical side, I'm not sure, Miriam, how you see this, but on the technical side, getting yourself into like a different language and getting yourself into a different digital infrastructure is something that we can manage, right? But if you have to do these evidence studies all over again, all across all the European countries, that's a big burden and a big investment to carry, right? So at least that they could do.
Aren't they doing some of that with the JCA? I know that's with right now. It's just oncology, don't they?
I have no idea.
But that's where you do one submission. Sorry, I'm probably getting ahead of right now. It's just for oncology and a few drugs. It doesn't necessarily make it easier, though.
Yeah, I guess
Submitting.
maybe to add here, I guess we need to distinguish between like a really clinical and medical evidence, which you do using a clinical evaluation, and you can do the study wherever you like. But the positive care effect study is more on proving that your solution actually has a positive effect also within that specific healthcare system. And because our healthcare system are healthcare systems are so different, I don't know whether there will be this way. I mean, yeah, when the French way came up, I guess there was at least a common understanding that they will accept the studies performed in Germany, but I guess in reality that wasn't the case.
There's actually one speaker we haven't heard from yet, Eric. I'm sorry,
Jose,
Eric.
good
You know
afternoon,
what? You
everyone.
disappeared from my screen.
Wow.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Security by obscurity.
And there's one aspect we haven't heard from yet, and that's security. And I'm
And I
wondering
hope
if you...
it's not going to be the last aspect we are thinking about when
No?
developing medical apps.
And I'm wondering if you can give us some advice from your
Yes.
perspective.
definitely like to. I mean, as one of Europe's largest IT security evaluation labs, being involved in testing, evaluating, and auditing systems, components, applications. And I think we already heard, I think Benjamin was mentioning some BSI regulations. I think Raquel at the beginning was giving a bit of the regulatory environment. So, I mean, if you look at it, what the developer should be keeping in mind is the good old CIA. And I'm not talking about the agency here in the United States, but it's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. That's old fundamentals in IT security. One should keep in mind when developing products, whether it's hardware or software. And that's actually something when we look at what the requirements of the DiGA, have been defined by BfArM together with BSI and the Ministry of Health in Germany, really was talking about. It's the security of the security of the processing and the privacy and the data protection of the data being managed and computed, with such applications. Now, we have been talking about partners before. One message I also would like to say, and you don't have to necessarily think about TÜV IT. I think in the process of the development, you should consider these aspects of IT security and privacy and data protection early on and get partners in, to help check and do reviews, whether it's going to be, checking code, whether it's going to be checking architectures and, the back end and the front end. That actually should be done during the development process, because once you finish and then you go into the application, for your DiGA to be reimbursed, and then you hire a lab to kind of do all the evidence. You have to do pen testing. You have to show that the company, you have an information security management system. You have to pen test the application. And if then, somebody like us points out there and there you have a problem, then you are going to go back to the start. So that's something which you may not have to occur, which brings me also to a point, and I think Evghenii was talking about quality in the development process. I'd like to put on top of that here, we should all start to think about software development lifecycle, which is actually something we find in a lot of the European regulations being started as well, because that ties back into quality, but also considers some security. So that's probably one of the things I kind of, would, to consider. Make security and privacy by default and by design one of your product development objectives, and develop on those elements very early on in the process. And then later on, when you apply, for a DiGA, or the evidence provisioning would be much more easy.
Thank you, Eric. I'm going to bring, I heard something, Eric. I don't know if you can tell me if this is true or not.
Come again.
And I heard, and I was just talking to some people, the university professors on Blue Sky, and one of them said to me, Europe collects more money in fines from IT companies than it does in taxes. I don't know if that's true. I think it mostly comes from fining American, not necessarily European companies. And I'm going to just check. I closed LinkedIn Live because it was causing me audio problems. Is there any chance we can give the people on LinkedIn Live a chance to join us here on Zoom. By the way, if you're on Zoom and you want to speak to I know this topic, people might be a bit reluctant to come forward. Feel free to put a question either in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you want to speak, and I'll invite you onto the panel. And Eric, go ahead, speak.
Yeah, but I don't have any numbers to support your statement, what you just now said, that Europe will fine more than others. But if you look at various regulations, and I'm going even beyond the medical part, you know, we have the European Cyber Resilience Act, which is now in force. We have the GDPR, which has been in force for quite some time. And we will see that, yes, there are some hefty fines imposed there if you are not following the essential requirements. And really, I think the key is here talking essential. It's not all bells and whistles, but it's basically security by design and default. More or less, that's what we find in all parts. And I think this is maybe where Europe not only puts it into relation, but starts to follow up now with really following it through. And that should be a good advice to developers. Think about that as well.
Are people more concerned about risk now than they were 2 years ago? Eric?
I think with big companies that has started to sink in. I think on startups and smaller companies, maybe mid-sized companies, I still would think there's a huge risk appetite. Too much, in my opinion.
I just, the reason why I ask is that I've been noticing European politicians talking about risks of data and in a way that they haven't before. And if the politicians start talking about it, eventually it's going to filter it down to our world. That's just been me. Maybe I'm being.
And again, because that's what you find if you make the effort to read through all those European regulations. So whether we talk the AI Act, whether we talk the CIA, whether we talk the NIS2 regulation, which is for critical infrastructure entities, even you look into the automotive sector, one thing which has now triggered, I think, the EU with all these regulations is, of course, whenever you do something, you have to consider risk. Risk of an application, risk of a system, and the measures of mitigating the risks. You know, that's what they're writing into the books now as well, is do that based on what could be the potential outfalls.
Eric, I don't know, I'm hearing a lot of static. Am I the only person hearing it?
No, I'm also hearing, yeah.
We can still hear you, Eric, and I wanted to kind of reply that I totally agree that security is a part of quality, because, I mean, or vice versa, quality is the part of the security. You can say it both ways. And the regulations, they come and go. I'm not saying they change every day or every month, but we might face new regulations coming in. And the way the software is built, the way you manage those risks, the way your attitude towards how the software is functioning, how well you can explain what is happening inside your software is essential to being able to adapt quickly to those changing regulations, or coming back to the subject of today's conversation, either passing the certification of DiGA or whatever other program we might face in. And speaking about coming back to that passage of pan-European certification program, yeah, well, it's Monday. Let's dream a little bit.
Raquel.
Yeah, I had two comments. One is about the initial comment regarding the risks. And this is particularly important because here we are talking about health data. So health data is a special category of data. So of course we have additional requirements regarding safety of the data, cybersecurity, also ensuring the quality, because in the end, the results from the data that is collected in these digital health technologies will be used for medical decisions. So quality is very important. Not only quality, there's a lot of aspects, but you need to take into account these. My second point is regarding to the comments regarding on updates. So we are already seeing updates on the medical device regulation. So the regulators noticed that after all these pressure from all the stakeholders, that it was too complex, too hard and it was hindering all the innovators developing medical devices. There will be changes to that complex regulations in order to facilitate the regulatory path for startups and all the innovations that are actually needed, and also to avoid not having access to those devices that are very important. So we are going to see updates in the future. And I have a third point now. The third point is related also to the type of technology itself. As my colleagues were saying, these type of products, they are constantly being updated. So software is constantly being updated. And this means from the clinical perspective that we need to prove from clinical and also technical, you have to prove that your product still performs and still has the clinical benefits that you are claiming. And for these, there is also need for updates regarding to the clinical evidence that we are showing. So this means using innovative clinical studies to actually prove those. And that will be very promising. And there's an evolution on that field as well. So we saw some evolutions just as a comparison. When we had COVID, there was a lot of new innovative trial designs to test different drugs for COVID. We need something similar for devices and for software as a medical device. So new types of clinical studies, new types of designs, which will encompass these cycles of updating on the technologies to actually being able to foster these innovations.
You know, Raquel, there was something you said when you first came on, and this is just the way I think or what I perceive. You said the phrase developed in a sandbox. And I think there was a time 2 years ago where I'd hear that phrase 4 times a year. Now I'm hearing it 5 times a day.
Yeah.
You know, and it's actually, and I notice when certain phrases or things that are like being said more frequently, is this something that's happening?
Yes, for sure. So there was incentives, let's say these public incentives from the European Commission on regulatory sandboxes. That's why you are hearing more and more about it. Especially because the Commission noticed that the regulations were hindering, and there's also they are not able to cope with all the innovations. So with all the new products, they cannot make new regulations every other month, and the current regulations don't encompass all the new products that are coming. So these regulatory sandboxes come as really nice tools where it's like a place where you can do experimentation, let's say. So they are still controlled spaces, but they are real-world environments where innovators can actually test their innovative products, and the regulators are within the project, let's say. So they can discuss those with the regulators, and there's a win-win. So the startups win from the expert guidance from the regulators' advices, and the regulators are also up to date to the new technologies and can update, for instance, guidelines to actually clarify and give additional recommendations regarding the implementation of the regulations. So these are this is a very nice mechanism that can be used.
A friend of mine actually said to me last week, I was talking to him about this, and he says, sounds like the key is untangle uncertainty from risk. And that seems to be what the regulatory standbooks is about, isn't it?
Yes.
Is separate what's uncertain and what's risky. And then you handle them differently instead of treating them both the same. But Ralph, we just wrapped up your first LinkedIn Live. How did it go? Do you have any reflections?
No, I think, Jose, it was super interesting discussion. Thanks for hosting all this. And yeah, I mean, I think everybody has got lots of questions around how will AI impact DiGA development, DiGA marketing, DiGA quality assurance, DiGA security. I think it will have a huge impact on how DiGA apps will be launched, managed, and further developed, even staying in the regulatory framework and performing. So I think it would be interesting maybe to have another discussion in the next year again and see backwards how DiGA tools helped DiGA AI tools help DiGA app developers to develop their products more efficient, more secure, and much faster.
Miriam, and then we're going to go to Eric and then Evgeny.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, guys.
You just casted the word AI.
Yeah, yeah.
You said the
right.
word.
Yeah, just to add on this, I would love to hear then about experience not using AI in the development and for documentation and quality, but having like a digital companion that actually is based on AI. Sometimes I ask myself the question whether we have, those DiGAs, they have quite a set structure, like you have an onboarding, you have a diary and so on, whether this will be the case in a year from now, or whether you would just like have one chatbot and that's your obesity DiGA, and maybe also how we combine different therapeutic areas in one DiGA, just having one chatbot. I would love to see this, whether this will be in place in 1 year, 2 years, or never, maybe.
Seems to be Google's business model. Evgeny, then Benjamin.
Thank you. I think that nothing will change dramatically in a year. That's my prediction. And the reason is not the technology is not allowing for the change, is that for the things to change, we need to change the processes. And the processes, especially like even within one single country, they change. Let's put it that way, not that fast nowadays, and there is a lot of hesitation on how, especially when it's related to the AI. So I don't think the things will change dramatically in a year. However, it's interesting to see how that push of the expectations, because like there are really high expectations on how the AI should change the things and the processes, the DiGA approval, the development process, the assessment process. There is a big push and there are big expectations. So it's interesting to observe how those expectations will influence the regulatory frameworks and how those who are in charge of adopting those regulatory frameworks and approvals, how they will react. That's why, coming back to Raquel's word, I'm happy to be the first the first member of that so-called organization that would help this happen.
I want to play devil's advocate. I used to work for a bank, and I was involved in a software launch at American Express. And one of the directors there said to me, Jose, finance will always be 15 years behind everyone else when it comes to IT. And that changed really fast because of existential pressure. And I'm not making a prediction, but if European healthcare is seen or believed or does experience existential pressure, things can change a lot faster. The pace of change can change a lot faster. But that's not a prediction. Benjamin.
I was looking for the mute button. So I was going in the same direction as Evgeny was. I guess applying AI and I'm focusing more on the speed up side of things. Leveraging speed up benefits that AI can be providing. I guess focusing on the medical space, it's like one of the worst things that you can try applying like speed to, because there's just so much framework and governance around it that would have to kind of handle the speed. With just to make an example, and I think that's slowly starting to get solved. But one example is when initially these BSI IT security requirements were published and were being put in place as a formal requirement for becoming a DiGA, it was still true that you'd have to redo the certification, like on every update that you would be publishing. So now, let's say you do the manual labor update, and you'll bring out the next update next month, let's say, and you can kind of shortcut that using AI tooling to whatever the next best prediction is. Is it like a 2x or 10x? I don't know, but let's say you could bring that update out in 5 days. Okay, who cares? I mean, the next slot that I can book with TÜV IT, for example, for having my application revalidated is probably like 3 months out. So where's the game, right? Where I can now maybe do like a lot of DiGAs in parallel, but probably that's not a good idea either. So I guess applying AI in terms of like the speed that it brings is something that you should look into different directions for, not one space that is so heavily regulated as the medical one.
Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add, so I'm glad that I've brought up the issue of AI, because I think it has a lot of capabilities to help the development. But I'm gonna pour a little bit of seltzers into our wine here. I hope that with AI, we're not opening Pandora's box, because one thing we have to be clear. I mean, and Benjamin just touched on that a bit as well. Probably AI could have developed, kind of look at some code things, but that's exactly what the bad side might do as well. And there are so good tools now out there to do a code analysis and find weaknesses. And that's where, as an attacker, I might jump in and try to steal data, because selling medical records, I think, is probably still one of the highest business opportunities, if you work, on the dark side. I think they still fetch more than credit card information. So that's something you have to keep in mind. But if you follow a secure development lifecycle, if you follow the risk management, you should keep that in mind, and you're hopefully going to be on the safe side.
Raquel.
Well, I totally agree with Eric's comment. So we do need those safeguards. And I also wanted to comment when we were talking about that we need this push button in order to move forward. Actually, as an example, if we look back, for instance, during COVID time, actually digital technology evolved quite a lot. So telemedicine saw a huge boom. So a lot of digital technologies were put into practice. We have e-prescriptions, we have the electronic health records. So there was this event that really pushed these technologies to go forward. And we are seeing new pushes now. So we never imagined that the medical device regulation would be already updated. So it usually takes 5 or 10 years to change a regulation. But because European in Europe, we are losing competitiveness. We are seeing startups going to other non-EU markets. The European Commission is changing this. The regulations are being changed. Mechanisms to improve competitiveness and investment of the startups in the European market is increasing. So this means that we have other push buttons to really change things. So that would be my comment. So we have the triggers, we have mechanisms. We need to go still further with better frameworks and working groups, of course, to move forward. But we are on the way. Miriam?
Miriam, we're going to start wrapping up the event. Can you give us a final word before we say goodbye to the internet?
Yeah, I mean, to sum it all up, I guess there are a lot of challenges still. I mean, the DiGA space never was without any challenges. Sometimes it feels like if we have tackled one, like the BSI certification, there's a new one coming up. But I think if you really do your homework, make up a solid business case, DiGA is still worth the investment, but you really have to be prepared to go the way and not to make too many mistakes on the way. I guess that's to wrap it up.
Thank you. Anybody else with a final word? Thank you, by the way, to all the speakers and the audience. We have two audiences, one here on Zoom, one on LinkedIn Live. And I've learned a lot. I'm going to watch this video. I'm going to watch the whole thing again. And when I'm in the editor chopping this up. And I think you're right, Ralph. We got to revisit this subject next year. And I think also, I don't know, we're thinking about Ralph, we're doing another event in September when the summer ends, but we're not going to announce that just yet. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll leave it there. Always leave when you're still having fun. Take care, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
to meet you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.